When Ruby Martinez stepped off that train in Copper Ridge, she thought she was starting a new life as Harold Brennan's mail-order bride. Instead, she found herself rejected at the station platform because of her Mexican heritage. But sometimes rejection leads to something far better than you ever imagined. What happens when the mysterious rancher Cole Blackwood offers her a chance at a different kind of future? One filled with secrets, danger, and a love that could heal both their wounded hearts. This is a story of courage, redemption, and discovering that home isn't always where you expect to find it. If you love tales of strong women conquering the Wild West, hit that subscribe button and let's ride into this emotional journey together. Rejected mail order run. Bride becomes mysterious, rancher's salvation. Wild West love story. The September wind carried dust and broken promises across Copper Ridge Station. Ruby Martinez pressed her leather satchel against her chest, feeling the crinkle of Harold Brennan's carefully worded letters inside. 3 months of correspondence. 3 months of hope, carefully constructed from ink and paper. The train's whistle echoed off the canyon walls like a mourning dove's crowing. Steam hissed from the engine, wrapping the platform in ghostly veils. Through the mist, she saw him. Harold Brennan stood near the station house exactly as he'd described himself. Average height, thinning brown hair. Merchant's soft hands clutching a bouquet of wildflowers. But his face, sweet Mary, his face when he saw her. The flowers dropped from nerveless fingers, petals scattered across weathered planks like fallen hopes. His eyes swept her dark hair, olive skin, the strong cheekbones that marked her mixed heritage. Mexican mother, Irish father. Beautiful, she'd been told. Exotic, others whispered. Apparently neither quality recommended her to Harold Brennan. Miss Martinez, his voice cracked on her name like thin ice. Mr. Brennan. Ruby kept her chin high, though her stomach churned. Thank you for meeting me. There's been a misunderstanding. He pulled out a handkerchief, dabbed sweat from his brow, despite the cool air. Your letters never mentioned. That is, I didn't realize you were Mexican, Ruby supplied quietly. Half Mexican. Does it matter? His silence was answer enough. The platform buzzed with afternoon travelers, cowboys heading home after months on the trail, families moving west chasing dreams. Everyone was somewhere to go, someone waiting. Everyone except Ruby standing with her small trunk and smaller hopes, while a man who'd promised marriage looked at her like she'd crawled from under a rock. I can't, Harold said finally. My business, my reputation, people wouldn't understand. Understand what a man keeping his word. Color flooded his pale cheeks. I'll pay for your return ticket, of course. Compensation for the inconvenience. He pressed coins into her palm. Silver pieces warm from his sweaty grip. The weight of them felt heavier than her entire future. Keep your money. Ruby let the coins fall ringing against the platform like tiny bells. I wouldn't want to inconvenience your conscience further. Whispers rose around them. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the scent of drama. She caught fragments. Mail order bride. Refused her. Poor girl. Shameful. Ruby straightened her spine. She'd survived her father's drinking, her mother's death, 3 years working for Judge Morrison in San Francisco. She wouldn't crumble because one coward couldn't see past skin color to character. Miss Martinez, the voice came from behind her, deep, steady, carrying the authority of a man accustomed to being heard. Ruby turned to find herself looking up at broad shoulders and winter gray eyes. He stood well over 6 feet, built like he'd been carved from mountain stone. His hat shadowed angular features, but she caught the firm set of his jaw, the small scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Cole Blackwood, he said, touching his hat brim. Silverstone Ranch. Even in San Francisco, she'd heard that name. Owned half the county, they said. Ran cattle and horses across 10,000 acres. The kind of man who could buy Harold's entire store with pocket change. Mr. Blackwood, Ruby inclined her head, grateful for the distraction from gawking faces. Seems you're in need of alternative arrangements. His gaze flicked to Harold, who shrank visibly under the attention. I'm looking for someone to teach the local children. Can you read and write? I speak 3 languages, Ruby said, pride steadying her voice. English, Spanish, and enough French to get by. I worked as a translator for Judge Morrison's court in San Francisco. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Interest, maybe, or calculation. The pay is fair. Room and board included. Position lasts through winter with option to extend if suitable. Behind him, Harold shifted nervously. Now see here, Blackwood. I have every right to... To what? Cole's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but it carried like thunder. Refuse a woman at the station, leave her stranded with nowhere to go. He stepped closer to Harold, using his considerable height to advantage. That reflects on all of us, Brennan. Ruby watched the exchange with fascination. Harold wilted like week-old lettuce under Cole's stare. This was power, she realized. Not shouting or threats, just the quiet certainty of a man who'd never needed to prove his strength because everyone could see it. Miss Martinez. Cole turned back to her. The position is yours if you want it. No obligations beyond what we agree on. Fair wages, fair treatment. She studied his face, looking for the catch. There was always a catch, but his eyes held no improper speculation, no hidden calculation. Just straightforward business from a man who'd apparently decided to help. What happened to your previous teacher? We never had one. Children around here make do with what learning they can get from parents or traveling preachers. He paused. Time they had better. The whispers around them had changed tone. Approval now mixed with surprise. Cole Blackwood was known as a hard man, fair, but not given to charity. This unexpected kindness was apparently news worth spreading. 3 months, Ruby asked. Through spring if you're willing, longer if you choose to stay. She looked at her trunk, at Harold's pale face, at the coins scattered on the platform like broken dreams, then back to Cole Blackwood, solid as the mountains behind him. I accept your offer, Mr. Blackwood. Good. He moved to collect her trunk, lifting it easily. Wagons this way. Harold stepped forward, hand outstretched. Miss Martinez, I hope you understand I meant no personal... I understand perfectly. Ruby pulled on her gloves with deliberate care. You're a coward who breaks promises when they become inconvenient. I hope your reputation survives the blow. She walked away without looking back, following Cole toward a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 bay horses. The crowd parted respectfully. Whatever else they thought of this strange turn of events, no one questioned Cole Blackwood's judgment twice. He helped her onto the wagon seat, his hand steady and warm through her glove. When he climbed up beside her, the wagon springs barely noticed his weight despite his size. Thank you, Ruby said as they rolled away from the station. Though I have to ask why. Why what? Why help me? You don't know anything about me. Cole guided the horses through town past the mercantile where Harold probably stood watching from his window. Know enough. Takes backbone to stand straight when the world tilts. Takes more to do it with dignity. They rode in comfortable silence past frame houses and businesses heading toward open country. The road wound through grassland dotted with cattle following a creek lined with cottonwoods. Mountains rose in the distance, peaks touched with early snow. It's beautiful, Ruby said, meaning it. Has its moments. Winters are hard, though, long and cold. Some folks find the isolation difficult. I'm not afraid of solitude. Sometimes it's preferable to poor company. That earned her a quick glance, something that might have been approval. What brought you west, besides Brennan's letters? Ruby considered how much truth to share. My mother died when I was 16. Fever took her during a bad summer in Los Angeles. My father, he meant well, but whiskey was his true love. After he passed, I needed work. Judge Morrison hired me to translate for Spanish-speaking defendants. Good work, important work, but 3 years of seeing how justice works differently depending on your name and color gets wearing. When Harold's letters came, marriage seemed like a chance for something different. Different how? A family, a home where I belonged instead of just worked. She adjusted her skirt, smoothing wrinkles from travel. Foolish, maybe. Nothing foolish about wanting a home. Something in his tone made her look at him sideways. Pain carefully controlled but unmistakable. This was a man who understood loss. The ranch is another hour, he said, changing the subject. You'll have your own room in the main house. Meals with me and my foreman Miguel, unless you prefer to take them separately. The children come from neighboring farms, so you'll need to organize lessons around their work schedules. How many children? 8, ranging from 6 to 14. Some barely know their letters. Others are sharp as tacks, but never had proper schooling. Ruby nodded, mind already organizing curricula. I'll need supplies. Books, paper, slates, if possible. Make a list. Miguel goes to town Saturdays for supplies. And you, what should I know about working for you? Cole was quiet so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, I keep my word. Pay fair wages and expect honest work in return. Don't ask about the locked room upstairs and we'll get along fine. The locked room. Ruby filed that information away. Every house had secrets. She'd learned not to go looking for them unless they affected her directly. Fair enough. They crested a hill and Silverstone Ranch spread below them. Ruby's breath caught. The main house was larger than she'd expected, 2 stories of solid timber and stone with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Outbuildings dotted the landscape, barn bunkhouse, smithy storage sheds. Everything spoke of prosperity earned through hard work. How long have you lived here? She asked. Built it 8 years ago, started with nothing but a land claim and determination. And now I run 3,000 head of cattle breed, some of the finest horses in Montana, and employ 20 good men year-round. Pride colored his voice, but it was earned pride. Not bad for a man who started with empty pockets. They rolled through the ranch gate under an arch bearing the Silverstone brand. Dogs ran out, barking tails, wagging in universal welcome. Cowboys emerged from various buildings to see who'd arrived, their faces curious but respectful. Cole pulled up at the main house. Miguel, he called. A weathered man with kind eyes and graying temples emerged from the barn. Ruby guessed him to be around 50, with the easy competence of someone who'd spent his life around horses and cattle. Miguel Santos, Cole said as the man approached. My foreman and the closest thing to family I've got. Miguel, this is Miss Ruby Martinez. She'll be teaching the children and helping run the household. Miguel's face lit up when Cole spoke her name in perfect Spanish. Bienvenida, señorita Martinez, he said warmly. It will be good to have someone who understands our ways. Gracias, Ruby replied, touched by the genuine welcome. I look forward to working with you. Miguel will show you around, Cole said, lifting her trunk. I'll take this up to your room. The house's interior was well built, but clearly lacking a woman's touch. Good furniture, but arranged for function over beauty. Clean but sterile. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, the parlor comfortable but impersonal. Senor Cole, he is a good man, Miguel said quietly as they toured the ground floor. But sad, you know, since the tragedy he keeps everyone at distance. Tragedy. Miguel's face clouded. His wife and daughter. The fever took them last winter. Very bad time. Understanding crashed over Ruby like a cold wave. The locked room. A daughter's room preserved like a shrine. That explained the careful distance in Cole's manner, the walls he'd built around his heart. I see, she said softly. How old was the little girl? Elena, 6 years old, sweet child curious about everything. Miguel's voice roughened with memory. After Maria and Elena died, Senor Cole, he blamed himself. Works too much, sleeps too little, pushes away anyone who tries to help. They climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. Ruby's room was at the front of the house, spacious and clean, with windows facing the mountains. Someone had left fresh towels and a pitcher of water on the washstand. The locked room, she asked quietly. Miguel pointed to a door at the end of the hallway. Even from here, Ruby could see the heavy padlock securing it. Elena's room. He goes there sometimes at night, just sits in the chair by her bed. Ruby's heart clenched. She'd seen grief before, but this felt different. Raw still despite months passing. And his wife. Maria was delicate, beautiful but fragile. The frontier was hard for her. When Elena died, Maria just gave up, stopped eating, stopped sleeping. The doctor said it was her heart, but we all knew better. She died of heartbreak. See, left Senor Cole alone with his guilt and anger. He thinks if he'd been a better husband, a better father. Miguel shrugged helplessly. Grief makes men foolish sometimes. Ruby unpacked, slowly processing this information. She'd accepted a position teaching children, but apparently she'd also walked into a house haunted by loss. No wonder Cole had warned her about the locked room. Dinner was served in the kitchen, informal but hearty. Beef stew with fresh bread, green beans from the garden apple pie that Miguel's wife Rosa had sent from their small cabin. Rosa had died 2 years ago, Miguel explained, but he still cooked her recipes. Cole asked polite questions about her journey, her previous work, her plans for organizing lessons. Professional conversation, nothing personal. But Ruby caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, assessing maybe, or simply trying to figure out what he'd gotten himself into. "I'll need to visit the neighboring families," Ruby said over coffee. "Meet the children, understand their current education level, discuss schedules with their parents. Miguel can take you around tomorrow, introduce you properly." "Thank you." Ruby hesitated, then forged ahead. "Mr. Blackwood, may I ask what happened to make you decide the children needed formal schooling?" Something shifted in his expression. "Young Billy Patterson, 8 years old, sharp as a whip, but can't read a word. His parents are good people, but they never learned either. Boy deserves better than spending his life signing documents with an X." "There's more to it than that." Cole's jaw tightened. "Elena was just starting to read when—" He stopped, shook his head. "Every child should have that chance. To discover books, to understand the world beyond what they can see. You were teaching her yourself." Maria was, French stories mostly. Elena loved the sound of the language, even though she didn't understand much. His voice grew rough with memory. She'd sit on Maria's lap in the evening, wallowing along with her finger while Maria read. Ruby's throat tightened. This wasn't just about education. This was about honoring a dead child's memory, giving other children the opportunities Elena would never have. "I'll do everything I can to help them learn," she said quietly. "All of them." Cole nodded once, sharp and final. "I'll say good night then. Breakfast is at dawn. Miguel will show you around the ranch tomorrow before you start visiting families." He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Ruby watched him go, noting the stiff set of his shoulders, the way he climbed the stairs with the measured pace of a man carrying invisible weight. Later, lying in her comfortable bed and listening to the ranch settle around her, Ruby reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. This morning she'd been a failed mail-order bride. Tonight she was a teacher in a house shadowed by grief, employed by a man who built walls around his heart like fortress ramparts. But somehow, despite the sadness hanging over Silverstone Ranch like morning mist, Ruby felt more hopeful than she had in months. Here was work that mattered, purpose beyond mere survival. And maybe if she was careful and patient, she could help heal some of the wounds that kept Cole Blackwood trapped in his pain. Through the thin walls, she heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, measured stopping outside the locked room. The soft click of a key turning, then silence. Ruby closed her eyes and said a prayer for the man sitting alone in his dead daughter's room, holding vigil over dreams that would never wake. Tomorrow she would begin teaching the children of Copper Ridge. Tonight she would dream of little girls who loved French stories and the fathers who read to them. Some gifts once lost could never be recovered, but new gifts could grow in their place if hearts were brave enough to let them. Outside her window, the Montana wind sang through the grass, carrying promises as vast as the sky overhead. The morning came crisp and clear, painting the mountains gold in the early light. Ruby woke to the sound of cattle lowing and men's voices calling instructions across the ranch yard. She dressed quickly in her practical brown skirt and white blouse, pinned her hair in a neat bun, and headed downstairs. The kitchen smelled of coffee and bacon biscuits browning in the oven. Cole stood at the window, cup in hand, watching his men begin the day's work. He'd changed from yesterday's formal clothes to working gear, leather vest over a blue shirt, well-worn chaps boots that had walked 1,000 miles. "Morning," he said without turning. "Coffee's on the stove." "Thank you." Ruby poured herself a cup, noting how he held himself apart even in casual conversation. A man afraid to let anyone too close. Miguel bustled in from outside, hat dusty from early chores. "Buenos dias, Señorita Ruby. Ready to meet our children?" "More than ready. I've been thinking about curriculum all night." They ate breakfast in companionable quiet, broken only by ranch business. Cole needed Miguel to check fence lines in the north pasture. 2 of the mares were close to foaling. The new bull had been challenging the older one for dominance. "Take the buckboard," Cole told Miguel. "Easier for Miss Martinez to manage visits that way." After breakfast, Miguel hitched up a sturdy wagon while Ruby gathered her notebook and a few simple books she'd brought from San Francisco. The children would need proper texts eventually, but these would serve for initial assessment. Their first stop was the Patterson homestead 5 miles southeast. The small farm sat in a valley protected from harsh winds, with neat fields of corn and vegetables surrounding a modest log house. Billy Patterson, the 8-year-old Cole had mentioned, came running when he heard the wagon. "Miguel, did you bring candy?" The boy's face was bright with intelligence, his clothes patched but clean. Better than candy, Miguel said in Spanish, then switched to English. Billy, this is Senorita Ruby. She's going to teach you to read. Billy's eyes went wide. Read like in books. Just like in books, Ruby confirmed, kneeling to his level. Would you like that? Yes, ma'am. Pa always says smart folks read newspapers and such. Says knowledge is power. Billy's parents, Tom and Sarah Patterson, emerged from the house. Hard-working people with calloused hands and honest faces. They welcomed Ruby warmly, eager to discuss their son's education. Boy's got a good head, Tom said proudly. Figures numbers in his head faster than I can write them down. But reading, he shrugged helplessly. Neither Sarah nor I ever learned proper. We want better for Billy. I can come twice a week, Ruby offered. Tuesdays and Fridays if that suits your schedule. Billy can practice between visits. We'll make time, Sarah assured her. Won't we, Billy? The boy nodded so vigorously Ruby worried his head might fall off. The next stop was the Martinez family, no relation despite sharing Ruby's surname. Rosa Martinez was a young mother with twin girls, Ana and Carmen, age 6. Her husband, Pedro, worked for Cole as a ranch hand. Senorita Ruby, Rosa exclaimed when Miguel made introductions in Spanish. Pedro told me about you. Gracias a Dios, someone who understands our ways. The twins peered shyly from behind their mother's skirts, dark eyes curious but cautious. Ruby knelt again, speaking gently in Spanish. Hola, Ana. Hola, Carmen. I'm going to teach you wonderful things. Numbers and letters that will help you read stories about princesses and brave horses. Carmen, apparently the bolder twin, stepped forward. Will you teach us English too? Papa says we need English for business. Of course, we'll learn both languages together. They visited 6 more families throughout the day. The Hendersons had 3 children, aged 7, 9, and 12. The O'Briens brought 4 ranging from 6 to 14. Each family welcomed Ruby with enthusiasm mixed with wonder. Most had never imagined their children receiving formal education. It's remarkable, Ruby told Miguel as they headed home in the late afternoon. These parents work so hard to provide for their families, but they understand education matters too. Senor Cole, he chose well, Miguel said approvingly. You see past skin color to hearts. These families, they have been treated badly by some, called names made to feel less than others. You treat them with respect. Ruby studied the landscape, rolling past golden grass stretching toward purple mountains. My mother faced the same prejudices in California. People who couldn't see past her Mexican heritage to her intelligence, her kindness. I won't let that poison touch these children. Bueno, very good. They rode in comfortable silence until Miguel spoke again, his voice careful. Senorita Ruby, may I ask something personal? Of course. You came here to marry, but that man, he was not worthy of you. Now you have work purpose, but a woman like you, so intelligent and beautiful, do you not wish for family children of your own? Ruby considered the question as they turned through the ranch gate. I thought I did. Marriage seemed like the next logical step after making my own way for so long. But Harold Brennan showed me something important. What is that? That marrying just to be married is a mistake. If love comes, it should be with someone who sees my worth completely, someone who values my mind as much as my face. Miguel nodded thoughtfully. Senor Cole, he is such a man. But his heart, he touched his chest. It is locked away like Elena's room. Maybe in time. Maybe, Ruby said diplomatically, but I didn't come here looking for romance. I came looking for purpose, and I found that. That evening, Ruby organized her notes while Cole worked on ranch accounts in his study. The house felt different with 3 people in it instead of just Cole rattling around alone. More alive somehow. She was sketching lesson plans when raised voices drifted from outside. Through the window, she saw a group of riders approaching. Even in the dim light, their intent seemed hostile. Cole appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. Stay inside, he ordered her quietly. Lock the doors after I leave. What's happening? Garrett Crowley, my business associate. Sometimes our discussions get heated. Something in his tone suggested there was more to it than business, but Ruby did as instructed. She watched from the window as Cole stepped onto the porch, weapon ready, but not raised. The lead rider was a well-dressed man in his 40s, handsome in a cold way. His companions looked like hired guns, rough men with predator's eyes. Cole, Garrett's voice carried across the yard, deceptively pleasant. Not planning to use that rifle, are you? Depends on why you're here, Garrett. Just checking on my little brother, making sure ranch life agrees with you. Ruby's breath caught. Brothers, Cole had never mentioned family. It suits me fine, same as always. Does it? I heard you're playing schoolmaster now? Hiring teachers, collecting strays. Garrett's gaze swept the house and Ruby stepped back from the window. Some might call that suspicious behavior for a man who claims to want solitude. What I do with my ranch is my business. Our ranch, Garrett corrected softly. Don't forget, brother dear, I have legitimate claim to half this land. Our father's will was quite specific. Father's will was also quite specific about the conditions of that inheritance. Cole replied, voice deadly calm. I've met every requirement. Have you working the land? Yes. Building it up, certainly. But lasting improvements, Cole. Permanent settlement. The will requires you to marry and produce heirs within 10 years of taking possession. How many years has it been now? 7, 8. Ruby's hands tightened on the window frame. A marriage requirement that explains so much about Cole's controlled distance, his determination to remain alone. I have time. Not much, and with poor Maria gone, Garrett shook his head in mock sympathy. Such a tragedy. Your wife, your daughter, both lost to that terrible fever. Some might say it was divine judgment for a man who abandoned his family to chase gold. Cole's knuckles whitened on the rifle grip. Careful, Garrett. Oh, but it's true, isn't it? You left me to care for our aging parents while you ran off seeking fortune. Selfish boy, always thinking of yourself first. I sent money home every month for 15 years. Did you? Garrett's smile was sharp as a blade. Strange, mother and father never saw a penny of it. Died in poverty while their younger son lived like a king in California. Even from a distance, Ruby could see Cole's shock. Whatever game Garrett was playing, this revelation cut deep. You're lying. Am I? Ask Miguel. He can tell you what condition mother and father were in when they passed. Practically destitute. Broken-hearted over their son who forgot them. I sent money, Cole repeated, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Prove it. Show me bank records, receipts, anything. Garrett leaned forward in his saddle. You can't, because it never happened. You invented that story to ease your guilty conscience. Ruby watched Cole's composure crack slightly. She wanted to run outside to somehow defend him against these poisoned words, but she forced herself to stay hidden, to listen and learn. Time's running out, brother, Garrett continued. 2 years left to fulfill father's conditions. 2 years to find a wife and produce an heir, or this ranch reverts to me. And we both know how likely that is, don't we? A grieving widower who keeps everyone at arm's length, who blames himself for his family's death. What woman would want such a man? Get off my land, Cole said quietly. Our land, Garrett corrected again. For now, but don't worry, Cole. When the inheritance comes to me, I'll be generous. You can stay on as foreman, paid wages for honest work instead of struggling with ownership you never deserved. He wheeled his horse around, his men following. Give my regards to your new teacher, he called over his shoulder. Pretty little thing from what I hear. Shame about her circumstances. They rode away, leaving Cole standing alone on the porch. Ruby waited until the hoofbeats faded before unlocking the door. She found Cole still outside, staring into the darkness. The rifle hung loose in his grip, like he'd forgotten he held it. Cole, he turned and she saw devastation in his eyes. You heard? Yes, I'm sorry. That man, he's your brother. Half-brother, same father, different mothers. Cole's voice was flat and emotionless. Always been jealous of what others had. Father left him a small inheritance, but tied the ranch to specific conditions. Garrett spent years trying to break the will. And the money you sent home? I did send it, every month religiously. But if mother and father never received it, he ran a hand through his hair. God almighty, if they died thinking I'd abandoned them. Ruby stepped closer, wanting to comfort him, but unsure how. Garrett could be lying. Could be, or maybe I trusted the wrong people with my letters and money orders. Either way, my parents died believing their son had forgotten them. His laugh was bitter as winter wind. Perhaps Garrett's right. Perhaps I don't deserve this place. That's grief talking, not sense, Ruby said firmly. You built this ranch into something magnificent. You provide good work for 20 men. You're bringing education to children who never dreamed of having it. That matters more than any will or inheritance. Does it, when it's all built on foundations of guilt and failure? It's built on your sweat and determination, on choices you make every day to be better than your circumstances. Ruby touched his arm gently. One cruel man's words don't erase 8 years of honest work. Cole looked down at her hand on his arm, something unreadable in his expression. For a moment, she thought he might lean into the comfort she offered. Then he stepped back, walls slamming down again. Thank you for the kindness, Miss Martinez. But Garrett's right about one thing. Time is running out, and some mistakes can't be undone. He walked into the house, leaving Ruby alone on the porch with the wind and her troubled thoughts. Later, lying in bed, she heard his restless footsteps in the hallway. The soft click of the key in Elena's door. She thought about the Will's marriage requirement, about Garrett's threats, about the pain in Cole's eyes when he spoke of his parents. 2 years. Cole had 2 years to marry and produce an heir, or lose everything he'd built. But a man who blamed himself for his family's deaths would never risk opening his heart again. He'd rather lose the ranch than chance bringing more sorrow to someone he cared about. Unless, Ruby stared at the ceiling, an idea forming in her mind. Dangerous, possibly foolish, but perhaps the only way to save Silverstone Ranch from a man like Garrett Crowley. She was still awake when dawn touched the eastern peaks, planning how to save a man who didn't think he deserved saving. 3 weeks into her teaching duties, Ruby had established a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Mornings spent at the kitchen table with whichever children could manage lessons before farm work called. Afternoons visiting homesteads, carrying books and hope to families scattered across the valley. Evenings preparing lessons while Cole worked his accounts, both of them orbiting each other with careful politeness. But beneath the surface, tension built like storm clouds on the horizon. Garrett had visited twice more, each time bringing new pressures. Legal documents questioning Cole's right to the ranch. Hints about government inspectors who might find violations in land use or cattle brands. Always with that cold smile and poisoned honey voice that made Ruby's skin crawl. Cole responded by working himself harder. Up before dawn in the saddle until dark, pushing his body as if physical exhaustion could quiet the guilt eating at his soul. Ruby watched him growing thinner, more remote and worried. He cannot continue like this, Miguel confided one evening as they watched Cole disappear into the barn for the third time that night. A man needs rest, needs human connection. Senor Cole, he punishes himself for things beyond his control. What can we do? You could talk to him. You are the only one he listens to anymore. Ruby wasn't sure about that, but she found Cole in Elena's old room that night. The door stood slightly open, lamplight spilling into the hallway. She knocked softly on the frame. Cole, come in. His voice was tired, decades older than his years. Ruby entered the room for the first time, breath-catching at what she saw. A little girl's paradise preserved exactly as it had been. Tiny dresses hanging in the wardrobe, books scattered on the window seat, a rocking horse by the fireplace worn smooth by small hands. Cole sat in a chair beside the small bed holding a French picture book. He looked up as she approached, no surprise in his expression. Maria read this to her every night, he said quietly. The same story about a princess who befriends a lonely dragon. Elena loved dragons, said they were just misunderstood. Ruby settled on the window seat, careful not to disturb anything. What do you see when you come here? My failures. Every promise I didn't keep, every moment I chose work over family. He set the book aside with infinite care. The night Elena died, she asked me to read to her. I said I would after I finished reviewing contracts. By the time I came upstairs, she was unconscious. Never heard another story. And Maria blamed me, said if I'd called the doctor sooner, if I'd paid more attention to Elena's symptoms. He shrugged helplessly. She was right. I was so focused on building this place, proving I could succeed, that I failed at what mattered most. Ruby chose her words carefully. Children get sick, Cole. Sometimes despite everything we do, despite all our love and attention, they die. That's not failure. That's heartbreak. Is it, or is it divine justice for a man who left his family once before? You mean your parents. Garrett was 18 when I left for the goldfields. Old enough to help, but not old enough to carry everything alone. I should have stayed. And done what watch the family farm fail. Worked yourself into an early grave for subsistence wages. Ruby leaned forward, urgency in her voice. Cole, you did what countless men have done. You went where opportunity called, and you sent money home to help your family. Money they never received. Because someone stole it or diverted it, that doesn't make you responsible. Doesn't it? He met her eyes, pain raw as an open wound. Perhaps I chose to believe sending money was enough because it was easier than staying. Perhaps I wanted the adventure more than I wanted to fulfill my obligations. Ruby stood pacing to the window. Outside, stars scattered across the Montana sky like scattered jewels. An idea that had been forming for weeks crystallized into decision. Cole, may I ask you something personal? Haven't you been doing that all evening? Despite everything that drew a small smile. Fair point, but this is different. She turned to face him. Do you want to lose the ranch? Surprise flickered across his features. What kind of question is that? An important one. In 18 months, if you haven't married and produced an heir, Silverstone Ranch goes to Garrett. Everything you've built, all the families who depend on this place, all the children I'm teaching, it all falls under his control. She stepped closer. Is that what you want? Of course not, but wanting and having are different things. You're an intelligent, successful, attractive man. Finding a wife shouldn't be impossible. You've seen what marriage to me brings. Maria died of heartbreak. Elena died because I was too selfish to see how sick she was. His voice turned bitter. What woman would risk that? One who understood the stakes, one who cared more about saving something good than avoiding personal risk. Something in her tone made him study her face intently. Ruby, what are you suggesting? She took a breath, stepped off the cliff she'd been approaching for weeks. I'm suggesting a marriage of convenience. Business arrangement, nothing more. I provide you with the legal requirements to keep your ranch. You provide me with security and a place where my work matters. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Cole's expression cycled through shock, confusion, and something that might have been hope before settling on careful blankness. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. Think about it logically. We already live in the same house, work well together, respect each other. Marriage would simply make it official. Ruby, he stood, ran agitated hands through his hair. You don't understand what you're suggesting. The isolation, the danger, the certainty that anyone close to me suffers. I understand perfectly. You're so convinced you're cursed that you'd rather surrender to a man like Garrett than risk caring about someone again. She moved closer, voice gentle but determined. But Cole, life has already hurt me. My mother died young, my father drank himself to death, I was abandoned at a train station by a man who promised to love me. I'm not some innocent flower who will wilt at the first sign of hardship. This isn't about hardship. It's about you being terrified to open your heart again. I understand that too. I'm not asking for your love, Cole. I'm offering partnership, mutual benefit, a companionship between two people who've learned that life is easier when you don't face it alone. He stared at her for a long moment, something working behind his eyes. And if Garrett retaliates, he won't give up easily. Then we'll face him together. Two people united are stronger than one person alone. And children, the will requires an heir. Ruby's heart skipped, but she kept her voice steady. If we're blessed that way, wonderful. If not, we'll make do with what we have. You'd risk everything for a marriage of convenience. I'd risk everything to keep something good from falling into evil hands. This ranch, these families, the children I'm teaching, they deserve protection from men like Garrett. She touched his arm, felt him tense but not pull away. And maybe you deserve protection too, from guilt that's eating you alive, from isolation that's slowly killing you. Cole was quiet for so long, Ruby wondered if she'd pushed too hard. Then he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. If I said yes, if it would have to be clear between us. No expectations beyond what we've agreed, no obligations for intimacy, unless we both choose it freely. Understood. And if you ever want to leave, want to find real love with someone else, I won't hold you to any promises. the same courtesy would extend to you. He turned away, staring at Elena's toys with haunted eyes. I don't know if I can be a husband again, even in name only. The thought of being responsible for another person's happiness. You're already responsible for the happiness of dozens of people. Your ranch hands their families the children you're educating. One more person won't break you. Ruby, if something happened to you because of me, then it would be my choice to take that risk. Just as it was Maria's choice in Elena's misfortune to be born in a time when children die of diseases we can't prevent. She moved to stand directly in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Cole, you can't protect people by pushing them away. You can only protect them by standing with them when trouble comes. Is that what you're offering, to stand with me for as long as you'll let me? Outside, an owl called through the darkness. Wind whispered through the eaves, carrying scents of grass and cattle and the eternal promise of morning. In this room where grief lived like a physical presence, Ruby waited for an answer that could change everything. Finally, Cole spoke. If we do this, if we do it properly, church wedding, public ceremony, let Garrett and everyone else see it's real. Yes. And you're sure, absolutely certain this is what you want? Ruby thought about the children she taught, bright faces eager for knowledge. About Miguel and the other hands who'd welcomed her like family. About Cole himself, wounded but decent, carrying burdens that would break lesser men. I'm sure. Then he drew a shaky breath. Then I accept your proposal, Miss Martinez. God help us both. They shook hands on it, formal as any business deal. But when their skin touched, Ruby felt electricity race up her arm. Cole must have felt it too, because he released her hand, quickly stepping back to safe distance. We should plan carefully, Ruby said, forcing practical thoughts. Garrett will be suspicious of any sudden marriage. We need to make it look like natural development. Agreed. 6 weeks of courtship should be sufficient, long enough to appear genuine, short enough to meet the timeline. They spent the next hour planning their charade. Public attention dinners in town, church attendance to gather small gifts and gestures designed to fuel gossip. Ruby found herself oddly disappointed by the calculated nature of it all, but pushed such thoughts aside. This was business, not romance. 3 days later, Cole began his campaign. He picked Ruby up from the Henderson farm in the afternoon, claiming he'd been in the area checking cattle. He helped her into his buggy with exaggerated care, ensuring Mrs. Henderson and her children witnessed every courtesy. Playing your part well, Ruby murmured as they drove away. Years of dealing with bankers and cattle buyers. I've learned to act when necessary. But his smile seemed genuine enough. How are the children progressing? Better than I hoped. Billy Patterson is reading simple sentences now. The Martinez twins are starting to understand English grammar. And young Sarah Henderson asked me yesterday if I thought she was smart enough for higher education. What did you tell me? That intelligence isn't limited by circumstances. With proper schooling, she could become a teacher herself, or a nurse, or anything she chooses to work toward. Cole's expression softened. You're giving them more than education. You're giving them hope. Hope is the most powerful tool any teacher possesses. They drove through town slowly, letting people see them together. Stopped at the general store for supplies, Cole carrying Ruby's packages with obvious attentiveness. Had dinner at the hotel restaurant, where Cole pulled out Ruby's chair and ordered wine with their meal. By evening, half of Copper Ridge was buzzing with speculation about the school teacher and the wealthy rancher. The courtship continued for 5 weeks. Church services, where they sat together, Cole's hand protective on Ruby's elbow. Picnics by the creek, where other families could observe their growing closeness. Evening walks around the ranch, when neighboring families visited, always within sight but suggesting intimate conversation. Ruby found herself enjoying the performance more than she'd expected. Cole was attentive without being overwhelming, thoughtful in ways that suggested genuine care rather than mere duty. When he brought her wildflowers from the high meadow, when he listened with real interest to her stories about the children's progress, when he smiled at her jokes with surprised delight, those moments felt dangerously real. You're good at this, she told him one evening as they walked past the barn where Miguel was training a young horse. At what? Pretending to court me. If I didn't know better, I'd believe you were actually interested. Something flickered in his expression. Would that be so hard to believe? The question caught her off guard. They were supposed to be acting, playing roles for public consumption. But the warmth in his voice, the way his eyes lingered on her face. Cole, Ruby, I need to tell you something. Before he could continue, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Garrett arrived with his usual entourage, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him in an elegant carriage, beautiful, sophisticated, everything Ruby was not. Cole, Garrett called cheerfully, I've brought someone to meet you. Victoria Ashford, recently of Boston. She's considering investment opportunities in our humble territory. Victoria Ashford looked like she'd stepped from a fashion magazine. Golden hair arranged in perfect curls. Silk dress that probably cost more than Ruby earned in 6 months. Porcelain skin that had never seen honest labor. Mr. Blackwood, Victoria said in cultured tones, extending a gloved hand, Garrett has told me so much about you and this charming ranch. Miss Ashford, Cole's voice was carefully neutral. Welcome to Montana. And you must be the school teacher, Victoria said, turning to Ruby with a smile sharp as winter ice. How noble of you to dedicate yourself to educating the local children. The dismissal in her tone was subtle but unmistakable. Ruby felt her spine straighten automatically. I find the work very rewarding. These children are remarkably bright and eager to learn. I'm sure. Victoria's gaze swept the ranch buildings, clearly finding them rustic. Garrett tells me you're quite the success story, Mr. Blackwood. Built all this from nothing, he says. With help, Cole replied. Good men, hard work, and fair dealing. How wonderfully American. Though I understand your situation has become rather complicated lately. Ruby saw Cole's jaw tighten. Garrett had obviously been telling stories. I'm not sure what you mean, Miss Ashford. Oh, just the usual challenges of frontier life. Managing such a large operation alone, dealing with legal complexities. Victoria smiled sweetly. Garrett mentioned certain requirements regarding your land holdings. Something about marriage and heirs. Victoria has extensive experience in land law, Garrett added smoothly. Her late father was quite prominent in Boston legal circles. She might be able to offer advice about your situation. Ruby felt the trap closing. Victoria Ashford wasn't here by coincidence. She was Garrett's solution to the marriage requirement, a beautiful, sophisticated woman who could provide Cole with the heir he needed while being properly grateful for rescue from spinsterhood. How kind, Ruby said before Cole could respond, though Mr. Blackwood's situation has already been resolved. Oh. Victoria's perfect eyebrows rose. Cole stepped closer to Ruby, his hand finding hers. Miss Martinez has agreed to become my wife. We'll be married next month. The silence that followed was deafening. Garrett's face cycled through emotions, shock, fury, calculation. Victoria looked like she'd been slapped. How romantic, Victoria managed finally. A whirlwind courtship. Not so whirlwind, Cole replied smoothly. Ruby and I have grown quite close over the past months. Haven't we, darling? Ruby's heart skipped at the endearment, even knowing it was for show. Very close. Cole has been wonderfully supportive of my work with the children. I see. Garrett's voice had lost all pretense of warmth. And when exactly did this understanding develop? Gradually, Cole said, as the best relationships do. Indeed. Garrett's smile was sharp enough to cut. Well, brother, you always did have a talent for the unexpected. Victoria, perhaps we should return to town. I'm sure Mr. Blackwood and his fiancée have wedding plans to discuss. They left in a swirl of dust and suppressed anger. Ruby and Cole stood watching until the carriage disappeared around the bend. That was not coincidence, Ruby said quietly. No, Garrett's getting desperate. Victoria Ashford was his ace in the hole, a woman who could give me heirs while being grateful enough to let him maintain influence over ranch decisions. And now, Cole's hand was still pulsing hers, warm and steady. Now we've forced his hand. He'll have to try more direct methods. Are you worried? For you, yes. For the ranch, Cole's expression hardened. Let him come. We'll be ready. That night, Ruby lay awake thinking about the moment Cole had called her darling, about the way his hand had felt in hers, about the dangerous warmth growing in her chest. This was supposed to be business, a practical arrangement to save the ranch. But as she drifted toward sleep, Ruby admitted what she'd been avoiding for weeks. Somewhere between teaching children and walking in moonlight, between shared dinners and stolen glances, she'd begun falling in love with Cole Blackwood. Tomorrow they would begin preparing for a wedding that was meant to be purely practical. Ruby only hoped she could guard her heart well enough to survive loving a man who'd promised her everything except the one thing she was beginning to want most, his love in return. Thank you for joining Ruby and Cole on their journey from strangers to partners in this sweeping Montana romance. Their story shows us that sometimes the best love grows not from passion, but from respect, shared purpose, and the courage to heal together. If you enjoyed this tale of second chances and frontier love, please hit that like button and subscribe for more Western romance stories. Share in the comments, Doris. Would you have accepted Cole's practical proposal? And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest adventures in the Wild West. Until next time, may your own love story be as enduring as the Montana mountains.